Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone, wherever you are in the world. My name's Brent, and today I'm going to be speaking to you about an introduction to WooCommerce development. I've wanted to give this talk for about 4 years. I've been working with WooCommerce for over 4 years. So I've never actually given it. I've been working on my slides very recently, and we'll see whether we can actually fit everything I want to fit into the next 35 minutes, because I want to leave plenty of time for questions at the end. But generally, I'm pretty excited to talk about it. I'm going to try and paint a picture that of WooCommerce and how all these different moving parts fit together, so that if you're new to WooCommerce, or even if you've been using WooCommerce for a while and hacking here and hacking there and adding bits and pieces here and there, you can actually sort of see the forest from the trees, I guess, and get an idea of how these different puzzle pieces in WooCommerce, which is quite a large and complex system, fit together. So Maria, can we kick over to my slides, please? Super cool. So the Eurostar train goes from London to Paris in under 3 minutes. And around 20 years ago, some engineers were asked to improve the journey for the Eurostar. £6 billion, which is almost $8 billion US dollars at the time. Later, they had shortened the travel time from London to Paris by about 40 minutes. Rory Sullivan, an executive director at a big advertising firm in the UK, loves to talk about this decision, because he suggested at the time they should install free Wi-Fi in the trains at about 0.01% of the cost. He also suggested 15 years later that during a TED talk, that if they were interested in saving only about £3 billion, they could have hired all of the world's top male and female supermodels and had them hand out free champagne for the entire duration of the journey, and it still would have been half the price. So about now, I hope you're actually asking why I'm talking about trains and supermodels and champagne in a talk about WooCommerce, which is a good question. WooCommerce development is hard. It's really hard, especially compared to WordPress development. The objects you work with in WooCommerce are larger than they typically are in WordPress, and the documentation is sparser. Forget a slightly boring 3-hour train ride. With WooCommerce development, you can spend days going around in circles or down rabbit holes before coming to your destination. You have to deal with higher user expectations compared to WordPress, where writing code for WooCommerce money is involved, which means your users won't tolerate shipping bugs if they're fixed quickly, even if they're fixed quickly. Your code can't fail. You also have more complex state and life cycle for dealing with. Rather than publishing posts in the write, edit, review, publish life cycle of the typical content in WordPress, you have to deal with cart, shipping, how you manage state between customers who may not be authenticated or who are authenticated. The object size and the data structure of the objects you have to deal with, like the cart, like products, like orders, are all significantly larger than the typical object size or data structure, and more complex than the typical data structure you deal with in WordPress development. There's also astronomically higher cyclomatic complexity. So when it comes to things like calculating taxes, the number of linear routes you can take simply through one function, like the cart's calculate taxes function, I've never actually calculated, but it's enough to do my head in, absolutely. And scaling is one of my favorite difficulties, because it's been something we've been really looking at Prosperous lately, the last 6 months to a year or so. When you think about publishing, the New York Times in about 2011 had a newsroom of about 1,200 people. If every one of these people was writing one blog post each week, which they weren't because the whole newsroom wasn't publishing on the one blog, and these posts were being published on the one blog, they'd still only publish less than 500,000 blog posts a year, which sounds like a lot. But on a WooCommerce site where orders can come from any number of customers, any number of times, it's not unfeasible for a site to be doing over 1 million orders a year, which is 1 million new entries to the database. And especially if they have something like subscriptions installed, which automatically creates orders on a schedule, you can easily exceed that limit. So when writing code for WooCommerce, it becomes anything you write, if it becomes sufficiently popular, you're going to have to start dealing with large databases and trying to optimize your queries with the given structure to work with that. And finally, on top of all of that, WooCommerce is a moving target. It's gotten much better in recent years, but it used to constantly be introducing breaking changes with newer versions. It still is, and there's more to come in the future, because it needs to change its database structure to actually get to be able to scale. So that means even when you've got things working once, you have a moving target that you then need to write things for again and relearn how something works in the new version. So before diving into the technical aspects of WooCommerce development, I think it's important to have some motivation to persist with these kinds of challenges. The great thing about the supermodels and champagne idea was that it took advantage of a passenger's natural pleasure-seeking motivations to overcome the physical constraint of a long train trip. We can do similar with WooCommerce. So today I'm going to entertain you with the Time Lord's Guide to WooCommerce Development. And if you look under your seat, you'll also find a free bottle of champagne. Not really, unfortunately. I am a Doctor Who fan, so I would really love to give this talk, but maybe another time. So the monotonous train ride is a good parallel for WooCommerce development, especially because Automatic and or the Woo ecosystem could collectively spend £6 million or $8 million and make it easier to develop for WooCommerce and perhaps to drink champagne while developing for WooCommerce. And hopefully in the coming years, collectively we will, especially the champagne. But for now, let's try the advantage of natural motivation to deal with the current difficulties. Before I even look at the technical aspects of WooCommerce, I want to touch on some of the intrinsic motivations for why you should get into and persist with WooCommerce. Because even if I manage to entertain you with the Time Lord's Guide to WooCommerce development for the next 20 minutes, and you had free champagne, it's only after that that the real work begins. It'll take years for you to master WooCommerce, which I think is worthwhile. So let me explain why. The first advantage is when you develop for WooCommerce, your users use your code to sell products, which makes them money. So they can use that money to pay you to customize their store, whether that customization comes as a service or buying your products. So one motivator is that it pays the bills. But that's pretty boring. Everyone knows intrinsic motivation trumps extrinsic motivation like money. So let's look at some internal motivators. The first one is actually the reason you need the motivation, in my opinion. The fact that it is hard is part of what makes it so fun to work with. As a WooCommerce developer, you're constantly being challenged because of the difficulties I talked about in the opening. And I think that makes for a constantly fulfilling job when you're constantly having to learn new things, tackle new challenges, and also try to get your head around extremely complex problems. Another reason is that, in my opinion, and from what I've seen, WooCommerce really does help people improve their life. It's really trite in software. It's really trite these days to say that software changes the world. And in many cases, it's drawing a long bow, including inside-out compression algorithms like Pied Piper. But when doing WooCommerce development, the work you do at its fundamental level helps people create and run businesses, which can help them improve their lives. I've personally seen this with hundreds and probably even thousands of people over the last 4 years. And it's a large part of why I keep working on WooCommerce despite plenty of shiny new technologies coming past me that could seem more appealing. We also interview founders on WooCommerce on smallworld.com and share their story. And it's very common for people, either prompted with a question or unprompted, to talk about how WooCommerce has helped them improve their life. Shipping any non-trivial WooCommerce code, in my opinion, will almost inevitably have a great impact on people's life. And finally, the reason many of us contribute to WordPress, both the software and the community, is because we believe having great free and really great and free, as in Liberty publishing software, is a good thing for the world. I think it's also a really good thing if people have great and free e-commerce software to give people an open platform and where they have control over building their business, and something that gives people control over the future of their stores, and so so that the future of their store isn't decided by one company or one person's choices, at least in theory. An important point on this is that it's really easy to see the exploding popularity of WooCommerce and assume the future is written and its success is guaranteed, but it really isn't. There are hard problems still to be solved in WooCommerce, like the scalability that I hinted at earlier. Worse still, the odds are actually stacked against it in solving these problems. Solving problems on an open platform like WooCommerce is arguably much harder than doing it in closed platforms with restricted interfaces and APIs that you control. Any change introduced to WooCommerce to improve things has the potential to break things with people who are hooking in places and using things in different ways. There's really no way to know how WooCommerce is being used. So the more high-skilled and highly motivated WooCommerce developers in the world, the better chance of the world having a free and open platform in e-commerce. So on to the technical stuff. I want to cover sort of three main areas today. The first is looking at the objects and the flow of WooCommerce. The next is looking at how, I'm actually going to flip this up and look at how those objects and that flow is displayed on the front end with front end templates. And then finally, I'm going to look at how that data is stored in the database to try and give you this big picture idea of how everything in all the main objects in WooCommerce are connected. So by the end of this talk, I hope you really can sort of see the forest from the trees. I did consider offering a cookbook in this talk and providing recipes for some cool things you can do with WooCommerce, like creating pre-order products or creating crowdfunding products and looking at custom order types and things like that. But I realized when talking to people who have been working with WooCommerce for years and who are first coming to it, sometimes they struggle early on to see how everything fits together because there's so many moving parts. And there's already good documentation out there, and you can always look at the code and figure out how to hook into something and achieve something quite specifically. But there's not a whole lot of information or anything out there that really gives you that forest from the trees kind of view. So I'll also say that this talk assumes a strong knowledge of WordPress development, particularly the Actions and Filters API, and also PHP object-oriented programming. If you're not fluent in these foreign concepts, feel free to continue watching, whether you're watching the live stream or watching it afterwards. But you probably will struggle a little until you've mastered those. So watch now, go back and try and learn those fundamentals, and then maybe come back and things will make a little bit more sense. So the first section is objects and flow. Probably the core object of WooCommerce is the product. In basically any cart, I would say the product is a core object. So products are instantiated as WC product objects. But really, that's just a core class. That's just a base class, an abstract class that is used to create specific types of products. WooCommerce itself provides at least three classes: the simple product class, the variable product class, the variation product class. And then extensions like subscriptions might also add the product subscription class or the product variable subscription class. But this is the fundamental element which brings products into WooCommerce. Products can also be created, most typically products are created by the store owner. So via the admin interface, they'll go in and they'll add a new product. And just like editing a post in WordPress, they'll create the product. But you can also create products both through the WP API. There's actually REST API endpoints for most WooCommerce objects. And they're built on the WP API infrastructure in WordPress core. And there's also in WooCommerce 2.6, I think they're introduced, maybe 2.5, there's WP CLI endpoints now too. So products can actually be created in a number of different ways. Once a product is listed in the store, it's usually added, the typical lifestyle for it is to be added by the cart on the front end of the store by a customer. This is done using the WooCommerce add to cart function. That function will set the product object in a internal property called cart contents, which contains a product ID key, a variation ID key, regardless of whether it's a variation or not. It'll just be empty if it's not a variation, and then a quantity of the product, as well as a data attribute. There's a few others, but the data attribute is actually storing the WC product object itself. So again, whether that's a WC product simple object or variable object, that will be stored in that cart item. And this is the sort of first step from a product sort of being purchased by the customer in a store. So another object that WooCommerce provides is a coupon. These are instantiated with the WooCommerce, with the WC coupon object. They're created, they can again be created by store managers via the REST API, WP CLI, or more typically via the admin. But much like a product, from the front end, a coupon can be added to the cart during while the customer is browsing or shopping on the site. This is done using the cart add discount function, and then that will add details of the coupon, namely the code of the coupon, which is kind of a de facto ID for it, into an applied coupons property in WC cart. When adding that item to the cart and when totals are calculated, the WooCommerce cart will also store a total of the coupon discount amounts across all the coupons added to the cart, as well as tax amounts for that. And then it keeps a store of the actual coupon objects as well in the coupons property. But that's not set from memory. That's not set until totals are actually calculated on the cart. One other big object that WooCommerce gives you is shipping. This changed quite significantly in WooCommerce 2.6, and it now provides a way to use what are called shipping zones, where you can set up a country or a region, for example, the EU, or say West Coast USA, and then set up shipping methods for that region. Shipping methods are things like free shipping, flat rate shipping, local pickup, and they're instantiated through a WC shipping method class. Now, take a short breath, because things get a little bit complicated here once you actually look at how shipping is calculated between the cart and these shipping methods. What happens is there's a function in WC cart called calculate totals. This calls another function in the cart called calculate shipping. All of this is to set up, if you drop to the bottom there where it says get shipping packages, is to look at the contents in the cart. That includes the product line items, the coupons, taxes and other things that are in the cart, and then create this thing called a shipping package. It then passes that to a new class called WC shipping, which is a class specifically for calculating shipping based on a set of packages, into a calculate shipping, appropriately enough named method, of the WC shipping class. This gets quite confusing, and really I could do a 40-minute talk just on how WC shipping works and how shipping is calculated in WooCommerce, but this is the fundamentals. What happens is the cart calls calculate shipping, that calls shipping, calculate shipping, that sets its own shipping total and shipping taxes, and it also passes that data back to the cart, which then sets two properties on itself, shipping total and shipping taxes. Unless you're really dealing with crazy things like having to set up recurring shipping or having to calculate shipping for some kind of unique use case, hopefully you'll never come across this. But it's hopefully a chart that if you are dealing with it, you can just look at this diagram quickly and say, oh, okay, this is how it works. Because I've certainly spent many, many hours learning and relearning how shipping actually is calculated. The final object I'll talk about in terms of something that exists in WooCommerce that can be added to the cart is taxes. So you'll set up taxes store-wide. I'll talk, actually no, I won't talk later how those are stored in the database, but you'll set up tax rates store-wide. It might be California, you have a sales tax of 7.5% or something like that. And then when customer sets their address, you can actually customize how WooCommerce determines which address to use, because different countries have different ways of determining which taxes to apply. But when products are added to the cart, and when a customer has set their address or the store's address is set or something like that, the cart will also call, in calculate totals, it will also determine the taxes for the items in the cart. And then it sets a property on itself called taxes. So once you have products and coupons in the cart, shipping has been chosen for the cart and applied to the cart, and taxes have been calculated on the cart, customers will normally head to checkout. This is managed, it's just a page presented in WordPress, normally just at checkout, normally with the URL /checkout, and it's managed through a class called WC checkout. Checkout is really sort of it's just sort of a middle layer between the cart and what the more important object, which is an order. An order is a record of the transaction between the customer and the store, including the products and taxes and everything else that existed in the cart when they checked out. These orders are created, firstly, via a create order function on checkout. Checkout calls a function called, appropriately enough, process checkout, which will take all the fields that have been submitted from the checkout forms, including billing, shipping address, if there are any, if there was any unique custom fields applied to it, as well as the shipping method that was chosen in case it was changed from the cart page, and then it'll call a create order function in there. And all of the four objects connect to the order through fairly appropriately named methods. Regardless of whether you're working with an order after checkout or some other stage, the WC order object provides you with an add product method for adding products to an order. These are listed as what are called a line item against the order. And then add shipping adds a shipping line item against the order. Add coupon will add a discount line item against the order. Add tax will add tax line items against the order. Orders have a lot of different data between storing the customer's details, so billing, shipping address, their email, their customer ID if they have a user account, as well as things like totals, so the tax total, the subtotal of line items on it. But one of the fundamental elements that we'll see a little bit later when we look at the database structure is these line items. And they can take, basically that's how a product, a shipping method, a tax and a coupon all fit into orders as a line item. And orders like coupons and like products can be created again manually via the store owner, so they don't actually have to come through checkout. And they can also be created through the WP API and the WP CLI. So let's have a look at how WooCommerce displays some of these things on the front end. WooCommerce actually has almost 150 different templates. So at first glance, it's really quite daunting to try and jump in there. But never fear, because many of these templates contain only a few lines of code, and you really only need to know about a few of the main templates to be able to dive in and see where you need to look. So I'm gonna cover those ones now. Let's start again, appropriately enough, with the products template. The products are a custom post type. So they're displayed in your store in a similar way to the way posts would be displayed. You might have, instead of a blog index or a blog post archive page, you have a product archive page. This is done using the archive product PHP template. You can also display single products, so just like a single post type, which are displayed using the single product .php template, and then the content-product.php template. If you have a look at these, you'll find that mostly what they are is just a whole collection of hooks to bring in some of those other 150 or so templates into what is actually displayed for the product. And if you look in the single product folder, you'll get a quick idea of some of the little templates that are there. This makes it really quite easy to customize templates just using the hooks, rather than having to actually having to copy a custom template, copy a template to your themes folder and customize it that way. I definitely recommend, because the templates are prone to change with new versions, I definitely recommend using hooks to add or remove content to templates from a plugin, rather than taking over the whole template from your theme. And so, as we know, once products are added to the cart, or the typical life cycle for a product is to be added to the cart. The cart isn't a custom post type, so it's a little bit different to products. And it has its own page template for displaying the items that are in the cart, as well as a few different forms on the cart page for adding, removing, or updating products. So you can update the quantity of a product, you can remove a product from the cart page. You can apply coupons on the cart page. You can, depending on the site settings, choose shipping methods on the cart page, particularly if you're already logged in. So the template that brings all of this together is appropriately named cart.php. This cart in a reduced form is also displayed in a few other places rather than just the cart page. It might be displayed in sidebar widget, or it might be displayed in the theme, like themes like Storefront will display it in the header as a menu item, so you can sort of get a quick drop down of what items are in your cart. These are usually displayed using the minicart.php template. And if you look in the cart folder under templates, you'll get a good idea of a lot of the little, both the forms that pull into the cart, as well as a few of the other little things that are pulled into these two main templates. On to checkout. Checkout is basically just a big form, and it's a collection of, and it's a bunch of form fields to collect data from the customer when they're checking out. For whatever reason, it's not called checkout. The main template for checkout isn't called checkout.php. It's named review order. And that makes sense when you think about what the checkout process is actually doing, which is converting carts into orders. So what's being presented to the customer usually is a bunch of data that sort of looks like an order in terms of having the addresses, having the totals calculated on there. But also, instead of being static data or data being displayed to the customer, it's also got form fields as input. So you have things like forms for collecting the billing and shipping address for the customer, a form for applying coupons, choosing shipping method again, and collecting payment details, which is quite an important one, and again, another talk in its own right, as well as logging in for existing customers if they have an account. I'd recommend checking out the checkout folder under the templates directory and just having a quick browse anytime you need to customize checkout and what type of things are in there. But again, if you're customizing checkout, there's a lot of hooks in those main templates that allow you to add fields or remove fields or add new sections or new forms to that page. And finally, we have orders. Orders are displayed on the front end of a site under the My Account page of a store. So hopefully you're familiar with the My Account page. That's sort of the singular place where all data for a customer is displayed, from orders to downloads to things like memberships or subscriptions that might come from extensions. Because of this, despite being a custom post type, which orders are, WooCommerce doesn't use the traditional custom post type template structure like for orders like it does for products. Instead, it uses two important templates. One is called orders.php for displaying a paginated list of orders under the My Account Orders tab. And then the other is called, appropriately enough, viewOrder.php to display a single order under the My Account View Order account endpoint. And that's basically the summary of the templates you need to know. So out of 150 available, almost 150 available templates, you can get a pretty good idea of how the templates are displayed on the front end just by jumping into one of these and then sort of following further down the rabbit hole. So a fun one, a really fun topic that is definitely a gotcha for newcomers to WooCommerce is database storage. It's fun because WooCommerce is built as a WordPress plugin. And I think it was built as that first and foremost, which meant that it really uses the WordPress structure and uses a lot of WordPress APIs to store data, which may not be on the front end or even in the code through the objects it uses visibly that type of data, most notably post types. So orders, coupons, products, many things in WooCommerce are actually stored as custom post types in the database, even though when working with them in code, they're not really there's very little relation between that and a post. So going back to products again, products are stored in the WP post table with a post type, custom post type of either product or product variation. And then the rest of their data, because the post table is fairly well designed for posts rather than for products, the data is split out over a few other tables, post meta, so things like price, SKU, width, height, a whole bunch of meta can be found in post meta. Almost anything that is a setting on a product will be stored in post meta. But then also you can have custom product types. So while I said before, WooCommerce provides the simple product, variable product, variation product, think plugins like or extensions like subscriptions also add a subscription product type and a variable subscription product type. These, rather than using a different post type for this, it actually uses a taxonomy called, appropriately enough, product type taxonomy, which then means you use the terms database or the term taxonomy database to find out the product type for a specific post. There's also product categories, product tags, just like post categories and post tags, which are stored in those terms and term taxonomy databases, as well as the term meta database. And then probably most importantly is if you're aware of variable products and how you create variations using attributes, the attributes for a product variation are also stored in the terms and term taxonomy databases. Coupons, again, are a custom post type, much simpler object than products. They're a post type of shop coupons stored in the post database. Even though throughout the code they're usually referred to by the coupon code rather than an ID like a post ID, they are found in here. And the post meta table stores data around like the type of discount it is. It's not a taxonomy this time. It's just a post meta entry because you can have fixed cart discounts like reduce everything in the cart by $10 or something like that, or reduce the total of the cart by $10, percent cart discounts where you reduce everything in the cart or the total of the cart by 10%, as well as product coupons, both fixed and percent. And again, coupon amounts, so these amounts like 10% or $10 are stored in the post meta table, and whether it's a free shipping coupon and a whole bunch of other stuff around limiting it to product IDs or product categories and things like that, all basically stored in post meta. Shipping methods, this is where we get to custom tables. So shipping methods definitely aren't a post type, a custom post type. There's a custom table called WooCommerce shipping zone methods. I will say I'm using the WP database prefix for all of these table names just as a default, easy to understand approach, but obviously that can change. So that could be anything _ WooCommerce. The WooCommerce prefix won't change on the database. That's hard coded, but the WP _ can change to be other things. But the shipping zones method, or the WooCommerce shipping zones method, is the table where you'll find most of the data on shipping methods. This connects to posts because products can actually have a shipping class. So you can have You can have a product which has a special free shipping class if you want to provide free shipping on that. And then when that's in the cart, the customer can choose that. But when that's not in the cart and other methods are there, there is no free shipping option, similar to how you could do it with a coupon. And then the settings for the shipping methods that you set, so the shipping zones and including like title, cost, and whether it's title and cost, are actually stored in the options table. So you have to go into the options table and search for an option name or option key with the value WooCommerce shipping method name, and then instance ID, which is connected to the shipping zone methods table. Based on, it's an instance ID because you can actually have different methods across different zones. So if you have a zone for continental USA, you might have flat rate in there and it'll be one cost, and then you might have another shipping zone for Canada, South America, and have flat rate in there again, but it's a different instance of the flat rate method. But yeah, again, shipping really could be a talk unto itself. Just as a little bit of heads up, hopefully you'll never have to look into the actual data and where it's stored, and you can just use the APIs. But if you're having to do queries directly for anything like that, for now, this is where the data is stored. Cart is a funny one because it's not a post type. Obviously, it's actually just a record of state between a user who might be authenticated or unauthenticated and who is doing something in the store, like adding products to the cart or adding coupons to the cart or things like that. Because of that, it's stored in WooCommerce's custom session handler. WooCommerce doesn't use PHP sessions, it uses its own sessions. It's an extensible system, so you can actually customize it again and use your own type of session handler if you want to use something else. But the database it uses by default is its own table called WooCommerce Sessions, appropriately enough. The session value column is where you'll find most of the data about each cart. Each cart has a unique ID based on the session ID. So the data in the cart is linked to that, which is then linked through a cookie to the user going through the front end. And the most important value in there is probably cart. It's not actually the full cart contents. It's actually the cart contents. So things like if you remember earlier when I showed that cart contents variable on the cart WC cart class, it had product ID, variation ID, things like that as keys, and then it had this data key which actually stored the WC product objects. Those objects aren't stored in the session. So if a product changes between page requests or page loads, it will actually change in the cart because WooCommerce pulls that data fresh from the post database and post meta database rather than actually storing that in the session too, because it would get out of control, I think. But also the applied coupons, taxes, things like that are stored in the session value. There's no shipping because shipping is almost always handled in the same request of either the cart or the checkout page. So it's not cached in that its session, although there is a cache for the chosen shipping method, even though it's calculated dynamically, which I definitely won't cover because, as I said, shipping is another talk unto itself. And then finally, we have orders. Again, it's a post type. It's stored in with the post type of shop order or a post type of shop order refund if it's a refund. A lot of the data is stored in post meta. So you have order total, order currency, shipping address fields, and billing address fields, all stored in post meta. And then there's two custom tables that WooCommerce adds as well for those actual line items. So you remember before I said products, shipping, tax are all added as line items to an order. And these aren't stored in post meta. They aren't stored as custom post types. They're stored as their own thing in WooCommerce in the order items table. And then in the order item meta table, you'll get details like the line total and subtotal, which is like the cost or calculated cost for those items, as well as product ID if it's a line item type or a product line item type, or something like shipping method name or tax code and things like that if it's one of those other ones. But that's how it's stored. This is actually subject to change. WooCommerce 2.7 is going to introduce fairly new APIs to WC orders or WC order classes. And then the plan is further down the track to actually migrate away from the post table. So this is some of the things I was talking about before, where WooCommerce needs your help. It needs good developers to be looking at this and testing this on sites and being able to help clients get over to this and help migrate custom code or plugins and themes that have been built for the old structure and querying the database directly safely over to this new structure, because it's extremely important that WooCommerce introduces this, but it is going to introduce some breaking changes. So from here, hopefully you've got enough to, I'll try to tweet out and share this link later, the slides to this link later somewhere, so you can refer back to them and jump in and sort of see, you know, the crazy emoji UML diagram of how all these different things fit together. But you kind of have to choose your own adventure or find your own way from here. It's really, like I said at the start, it's not like WordPress where you have this extraordinary community of like 10 years or 13 years of people publishing blog posts with tips on how to do almost every little thing you'll want to do, and you just sort of substitute the name of the post type or something like that. WooCommerce is still a lot younger. The community is still developing a lot more. You can't get those kind of resources yet. Hopefully in time they'll come. But instead there are sort of some resources that can help. Two cool plugins, What the File by Barry and WooCommerce Template Hints by Daniel. You can find them both free on WordPress.org. Particularly WooCommerce Template Hints is quite handy for front-end development. If you need to find out which template is displaying something on the front end. I only learned about this the other day, and I thought it was super cool. It puts this big box around each template and shows you which template is actually being displayed or being used to display a certain section. So then you can just jump into that section. There's also official API docs, including I had some links throughout earlier on for functions and classes and things like that at docs.woocommerce.com/wp-API docs. I tend to use the WooCommerce code base more myself, but certainly if you want something that's searchable, has a full list of hooks, then that's a good place to go, as well as hooker.io. It has the plugin hooks there as well. So thank you for listening. I'm then Brent on Twitter, and if you feel a little bit inspired or I've sort of aroused a bit of motivation in you with my talk earlier, we're hiring at Prosperous, the company I founded, which is dedicated to building software, content, and community on WooCommerce. Send an email to people@prosperous.com. We'd love to hear from you. We have extremely high standards, but we definitely like to, are always looking for really good developers to join the team. And one final note, we're actually doing or planning to do a community survey in the coming weeks of the sort of WooCommerce world, or Woomity. I've heard it being very terribly called. If you want to help with that, we need to get help both in people beta testing the survey questions, so getting an idea of whether we're asking things clearly, if we're asking too many questions, not enough. And also we're looking to sort of provide some incentives for people to go through the survey, so things like licenses to products and things like that. So if you build things for WooCommerce and want to help out, we'd love to talk about what we could donate. We're really excited about running this because we think, we always see the stat about WooCommerce being the most popular e-commerce in the world, but we really have no idea of the deeper picture of like what languages people are selling in, things like what products they're selling, whether it's physical or virtual, what the average sort of store size is and things like that. And we're really hoping if we can get enough people to do this survey, we might be able to start to paint a bit of a broader picture on that. Yeah, I think I've nailed it at 40 minutes. Hopefully I've got like 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes for Q&A. I'll jump in now. Maria, if you want to jump over to the video, back to video, I'll try and look at what questions we've got. Top one is, any specific advice for developing WooCommerce extension? Persist. That's probably the best one I can give, because it's probably going to be harder than you think it is, almost certainly going to be harder than you think it is. I guess persist, and also maybe do your research at the start. You probably want to make sure what you're building is either, if it's not for a client, you want to make sure people are going to use it, because as anyone who's sort of built software for more than a little while knows, most of the cost of software, particularly with WooCommerce where things change, is in the actual maintenance. It's not actually, it's not so much in the development of it. So you need to have something that's going to be popular enough that you'll be able to maintain it for years to come, because you don't want stores depending on your code and then not being able to actually use it anymore. How insane is WooCommerce 3.0 going to be? I reviewed, this is from Brian. It's a good question. This is one of the things with open platforms. It's hard to answer. I reviewed the CRUD create, read, update pull request that Mike Jolly had done a couple of weeks ago, and he's done a really good job. And the Woo guys in general, Claudio and Mike and people working on WooCommerce now do a really, they work extremely hard at trying to maintain backward compatibility and not break things, which is a very hard thing to do when you don't know what everyone is doing with your APIs and your code. I think, yeah, I don't know. It's really hard to say, because hopefully 2.7 may well be the one that's the bigger issue, because that's introducing the new APIs. So you may see more breaking changes with 2.7, but they've done a really good job of working on compatibility. There'll be notices between 2.7 and 3.0 for a long time to come about things that are using the APIs that are going to go away, things like that, things that are hitting the database directly. Because by the time we get to 3.0, the way they're structuring things is, the way they're planning things is really clever, in that by the time we get to 3.0, all that will be changing is the database tables underneath. So the only thing that would break in that situation is plugins and themes that are querying the database directly. And that'll just be the post table, because it's mainly the orders that are moving over. So I think, I don't know, I feel optimistic about it. It's certainly scary to think about changing the underlying data structure, database storage and data structure of a fundamental object in the most popular e-commerce platform in the world. And I fear for the sleep that Mike and Claudio, etc., are going to lose over the coming months and years. But I feel optimistic that they're doing a really good job of it so far. And like I said, they certainly could use our help. I think anyone in the community who's built things for clients or for plugins should try to keep an eye on it, try to help tell them what would break in their own thing, to sort of show them that, because it's certainly impossible for them to know it as hard as they work at it. So we'll see. On a scale of 0 to 11 in insane, time will tell. So how do you upgrade WooCommerce while making sure nothing gets broken in a highly customized with lots of custom extensions and standard WP extension? Pro tips, please. That's an extremely good question. At the moment, it's manual. You have to set up a staging site. Don't ever upgrade things on your live site if you have that kind of level of customization going on. Set up a staging site. You can go through and run the most critical tests, things like going through the cart and checkout process. If you want to get, depending on your needs or your client's needs, you can set up acceptance tests. So there's Codeception out there, there's BHAT, there's things like that you can write acceptance tests for. So when new versions come out, you can automate that testing process. Certainly, I think that could save time in the long run, but it'll take a lot more time in the short run. But pro tips for now, it's try to also keep up on what's happening in WooCommerce. Definitely read the beta and release candidate blog posts. Mike is doing a really good job, and Claudio are doing a really good job these days of flagging everything that's changing in there, trying to point out things that might affect, as well as keep an eye on the development of WooCommerce. Maybe even have your development sites always running on the master branch from GitHub or things like that, because that'll give you early notice, and you can, before the version's even released, you can open a pull request or open an issue and let them know it's broken, something that maybe you think it has or hasn't. Are there any plans to make the template structure take a more component-based approach like ES6? Why or why not? That's a good question, AJ Zane. Asking the wrong person. I definitely contribute to WooCommerce Core. I've contributed for a while, but I don't make any of the big decisions. Certainly some of the things are going to move. I think a lot of the React interface, a lot of the admin interface is going to move to React. Once there's CRUD APIs there for creating, reading, updating, deleting products, you could certainly build your own component-based templates and things like that. But I don't know if there's any plans to drastically overhaul the front-end templates. I would be surprised if they would do that at the same time as drastically overhauling the data structures and database storage schemas for 3.0, but maybe further down the line. What is the best way to filter results? I think I just stopped screen sharing, Maria. If you want to, if you want to change back to the other video of me, I think I was still screen sharing. What is the best way to filter results? I'll do one more question, maybe two more questions. What is the best way to filter results after instantiating the class to show products? Or rather, what is the recommended way to call products like WP Query, then show a particular product category or filter by meta like featured? I'd Google that. That's a pretty intense question. Certainly, like, I don't do a huge amount of front-end work, but when I have done front-end work, I've tried to do the WordPress best practice. When working with products, they're a custom post type. That's not changing or going anywhere. I don't know if there's like a get products function that's equivalent to get posts. I think it's still mostly done with get posts, but definitely like check out, do a quick Google. I think have a look at how the core templates do it, particularly those product category templates. Have a look at how they do it, and that's usually a good source of best practice. So final question from Brad. When you think about your team, Jason, Becca, Max, Skyverge, Mike, James, Patrick, and the whole WooCommerce ecosystem as a whole, how business owners now have a greater revenue stream thanks to subscriptions and have been able to hire more employees, financial impact that WooCommerce has had on individuals and family income, the empowering and enabling impact that WooCommerce plays in the economic shift to an independent and individualized level. How do you see the future of WooCommerce evolving? Great question. I think it's more of that. I definitely think having an open platform, when I talk to people about e-commerce, it gets used in unexpected ways. People really are able to take control of their future in a way. They're limited only by sort of their ability to adopt or to learn how to use the platform, and then their inventiveness in what they sell and how they sell on that. So I think it's an extremely bright future, both for people in the ecosystem, as well as for people who are sort of coming to WooCommerce to set up their stores. And I think that's all the questions. I got through them. Thank you all for watching. It's been a pleasure. Enjoy the rest of WordSesh.